You're 100% correct in that on the millage increase this fiscal year, you were there, I was there, I voted with you on that, and our colleague Alderman Perkins reminded us that just because the Board of Aldermen says that it's going to be dedicated to streets and drainage, how do you handle that since we only issued $3 million in bonds right now? You still have a large sum of that tax increase that is technically unaccounted for in the next fiscal year. You're not on the board. You've got 4 new aldermen that did not pledge to keep that there, as revenues from the state are going to lag or decline and other pressures within the general fund come up. How do you guarantee the public that those monies actually are spent on streets and drainage, since we had the opportunity to lock it in through the bond issue process?
Well, you're right. I mean, what this board did is it set aside of the 19.55 mills, we set aside a very specific number for road and road improvement. Every year, you set a new tax levy. What I understood from each of the candidates is they considered infrastructure, roads, drainage, sidewalks to be a priority. I don't see a single person up there who are wanting to redirect those funds to another purpose. And I think you're right. As we see falling revenues, as we see issues across the city, that was one of the reasons why some people in the community were concerned about over-obligating ourselves with a $12 million bond as opposed to a smaller number as we work through these uncertain economic times. I can't guarantee that, but I do know that from what the public is looking at, and from all the candidates, they've all said this is their #1 priority from a road standpoint. So I don't see it changing.
Going back to, and you reminded me right there, the other question I wanted to follow up on, and following on Steve's question about your timetable on building public consensus, and you talked about the committee that we had formed to look at municipal facilities. What happens if in this discourse people say, no, we want a new police station? And are you going to put together another citizens committee to go back over that ground again and say, and start with the basics? What are the priorities? Because I think I heard you say, we need a city hall to bring industrial development project, which I don't disagree with. I mean, trust me, I don't disagree with that. I've been in that building too long. But are there for the public, are there other more pressing needs municipal building wise than that? And how do you make sure that the public buys on to this is the order in which we need to attack those?
Well, we do have an excellent opportunity because this is election time,
right,
and people are making those decisions right now. As you said, we have a minimum of 4 new aldermen.
Right.
We have a new mayor, and these are the type of things that I'm being asked, and I know the alderman candidates are being asked. And so we're going to have, I don't mean too strongly a mandate because there will be a referendum, but there's essentially a mandate of these are our priorities as a community. We have a whole host of other needs associated with this city, and they're stacking up, and we have to get this settled and move on. If it's the board's thought process, and they will have been elected here, that no, our needs are this, then I'm going to support the board. My job as mayor is to bring the board to action, to bring them to consensus, and if that's the direction that they feel is most appropriate, then I'm going to support them. But y'all asked me very specifically, what do I believe as a candidate is our most pressing need? How do we provide functional facilities for our employees? That's how I see the path forward.
Well, how do you, as the mayor, take that forward? Because 4 years ago, Dan Kemp and somewhat you both said we were elected with a mandate from the public to build this downtown police and court, and yet 3.5 years later, we still have nothing, even with y'all's mandate from the previous election.
Right.
So, I mean, I hear you say if we're elected, it'll be a mandate, but how do you as mayor move that process forward and,
right,
and do exactly what you're saying and sell it to the public specifically?
Well, first of all, I mean, 59-point-something% of the voting public agreed with the plan.
Let me interject, and I've told you this before. You need 60 plus 1. How do you achieve that? If you're going to send it to the public and it's undemocratic, it is inherently undemocratic that a minority can hold back the majority's will. But how do you do it?
You start with the good faith that that one we inherently have when we say that we're going to involve and include the public. The feedback that we got as we were in this process was it was too big and too expensive. And I think if we had listened to some of those concerns and instead of presenting a $9 million program, something other than that, we would actually hammers would be swinging, as someone said in a column. You have to have some give and take. Again, this community that continues to push for 100%, they get nothing. Community that pushes for some type of compromise gets something. I'll give you a great example on the road bond. Everybody in this community agreed we need to have better roads, better sidewalks, better drainage. We tried for the $12 million, and there was, of course, a publishing issue, but then there was also a petition. In 10 days, something like 1,500 people said, no, you guys didn't involve us in the process. We want a referendum. And so what we do, we got a $6 million bond. And I know for some people that's failure. For me, that is this construction season, we're going to spend 8 to 10 times more than we've ever invested in infrastructure before. I don't consider that a failure. And I realize that does, there are some people who say, nope, we got to plant our flag in the ground, and if it's not 12, it's nothing. We got to look at what we're getting. And this year we're going to spend almost $5 million when we include stimulus money in our roads. Same thing with this. We're going to put together a program. We're going to make tweaks as we need to, and we're going to put it to the people. You know what? We may not succeed, but we're going to put it to the public. We're going to give it our best efforts. We're going to do town halls. We're going to meet in every single ward. We're going to communicate differently than we ever have in the past. I think, as much as I'd like to say it's going to be a reflection of our efforts on the mayor and board side, I think the community is ready to move forward. You put them a reasonable plan, they're going to support it.
Let me interject. We're at 25 minutes on a city hall. Steve, why don't you lead us off to the next question?
Well, you've talked some about the road bond, and a lot of this keeps coming back to money, and I'll ask this question simply, and this is a yes or no question. The $3 million that remains on the bonds, on the roads, are you going to push to go ahead and have those issued?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that clear enough?
That's perfect. You've talked a whole lot about long-range planning, but in the other breath, you don't want to obligate another board. Having been involved in city government and covered city government for almost as long as you are old, I find those two don't go together. You can't say I'm not going to obligate a future board and then talk about long-range planning. I mean, that's the beauty of long-range planning is that you do set out a goal. You just talked about tweaking things as you go. Certainly things can be tweaked. How do you justify those two positions?
All right. Well, first of all, Steve, I'm going to be 40 this summer, so either you're much older than you look.
I am.
Fair enough.
I won't say how much older.
He started when he was 2.
Right.
That's
and secondly, I don't think that's actually a fair characterization of my position. We actually borrowed almost $1 million 2 years prior to this road bond for streets and drainage, which will continue into the next administration. And so again, it's not a black or white issue. What we ran into here, it isn't what we wanted. It was a petition that organized in 10 days. It brought 1,500 signatures. So the board can get in the Pearly City Hall, the high City Hall, and the problem is that if you're not bringing the community along with you, it doesn't matter what you think is best. In my mind, when you have a petition, you have failed as a city government to talk about, to bring people together. And so that's a problem. Again, do I believe we have $12 million in needs? I actually believe we have significantly more than that. This is just a catch-up program. You look at economic development, we need to be connecting Stark Road and Hospital Road to bring in a brand new hospital corridor that will bring taxes to this community, a true tax base. We're not even talking about anything new. We're talking about the existing. So that's part of the process. It's not about, in my opinion, it was not about obligating future boards, because personally I supported a plan 2 years before that extended into this next term. It was, what do we do so that we don't end up with nothing? If we had gone to a referendum, we had the risk not only of not having it succeed, but secondly, we had the risk of not being able to start in this construction season. And what do we want? Do we want $5 million this year, or do we want nothing? And I understand the academic discussions. I understand that we can, as individuals, sit around coffee tables and talk to just our friends who think just the way we do. Starkville is a community of many diverse opinions, many diverse backgrounds and socioeconomic things, that we've got a community that needs to come together, and it's not a one approach fits all. We got pushback on the plan that was presented, the $12 million plan. We regrouped, we compromised, we came forward with a $6 million plan that I was very proud to broker that compromise, and with Alderman Davis. You know, we sat at the table and did exactly what we were supposed to do. I think we both rolled up our sleeves, both literally and figuratively, and came up with a plan. Do I think we have more needs than that? Absolutely. But you can't lead if you don't have people who are willing to